may want to make sure they heard what they thought they did when we were talking. Welcome to everyone today. I'm really excited to see all of you today. It is Tuesday, and we actually have a guest with us for the exchange today. We try to do that every once in a while. And our special guest is Miss Caprice Morgan from Tennessee, who is a proud and smiling member of the AARP Tennessee CSN award-winning McCoy team for 2023. And she is the Associate State Director for the West Division. Tennessee, I'm sure you'll hear about, is divided into three separate areas, but she has knowledge of what's going on in the state. And I think that she can be very helpful in getting us started today on our topic, which is recruiting and retaining volunteers, success stories, and best practices. So without further ado, I want to just turn the beginning discussion here over to Miss Caprice. All right.
Thank you, Deborah. First of all, thank you, Deborah and Gail and Lisa on our team for welcoming me and inviting me to talk with you all today. This is a very exciting subject for me because, as you all know, none of us can do the great work that we do without you. Everyone on this call is part of our amazing volunteer team all over AARP, all across the country. And the many, many goals that our national office ask us to meet and ask us to participate in, ask us to advocate for. Yes, we have staff, but we couldn't get any of that done without you, the volunteers. And that's always number one and top of mind for me. And I always keep in mind, number one, that the folks that partner with us as volunteers, you are volunteers. That means you are not being forced to do this. It's a choice. And we are always grateful. We should never lose sight of that, that you're choosing AARP. You're not forced to choose AARP, right? So that makes a difference. And when we interact with volunteers as staff members and as fellow volunteers, we need to remember that the time and the dedication and the effort that you volunteer and choose to share with us is truly a blessing, and it can't be taken for granted. And that means that nothing is stronger than the heart of a volunteer. So, as we all know, it's one thing to do something because you feel like you have to, then it sort of becomes drudgery, right? You lose the joy, the excitement is not there. But if it's something that you love doing and you like doing, and it's what you want to do with your time, then that changes the whole dynamics of not only your attitude toward it, but also ours as well. So that's why we all make such a perfect team. And I think one of the most important things to keep in mind when we're talking about recruiting and retaining volunteers is to first ask the volunteer, what part of AARP do you see your particular skill set, interest, thought process, your time fitting within, instead of us coming to you saying, hey, I think you'd be a great volunteer and I want to place you here or there, right? So right there, that's kind of starting the relationship off on the wrong path because we forgot to ask you, what do you like? Where do you see yourself in our organization? What's your skill set? What's your background? How can we work together to include you on things that we're offering in our programming? Because AARP, as you all know, has so many layers. I'm still learning that myself. I started with the organization in May of 2020. And before becoming a staff member, I was a volunteer also for about a year and a half and really trying to learn. And I'm still trying to learn all of the different layers. But my favorite part about being an outreach director is really interacting with you, the volunteers, and with the community. I think another key point in retaining our volunteers is to really involve them in the entire process of participating in a community event, starting with selecting it. As you know, we get a lot of requests. Not all of those requests are going to be worth the time and the effort that it's going to take us to get everything off the ground, to get supplies ordered, to get internal forms and approvals completed at AARP. Again, and again, I'll confess, that's the piece I'm still learning, because when something really good comes along, my personality type is that I just sort of take off and oh, okay, let's go. And then at the end of it, I find out, well, there's 5 forms that you didn't fill out internally that not only our state director, but others above her had to approve. And you're already halfway done with the event. so I'm trying to get better at that. But that just shows you how much it takes just to get something off the ground. So we absolutely love it when our volunteers come to us with events or community engagement or outreach events that are happening in their local community and say, hey, I think this would be a great idea. How does that fit with our goals? Does that fit under advocacy? Does that fit under our voter engagement? Does it fit under fraud or caregiving? Once we determine that, then together as a team, both the staff and the volunteers, then we can start down that process of getting the internal approvals and everything we need internally first, then figuring out the plan of working on the event, who's going to show up and handle the event, what type of engagements are we going to collect, how are we going to collect those. And the other piece is making sure that our volunteers really understand the whole electronic process that we're moving to now, right? And at the same time, not leaving anyone behind, because here's what we always have to remember. Not everyone is tech savvy, and they don't have to be a volunteer with AARP. Not everyone on the volunteer team has access to the internet or strong access to the internet, especially here in Tennessee. We have huge pockets of rural volunteers and rural AARP members, and we always have to consider them when planning the events, because we don't want to appear that we, as an organization that's always advocating for everyone, we say what we do for one, we do for all, right? So we can't put ourselves out there as a hypocrite and say the only time or the only way you can participate is if you can log in and register. Now, that may seem easy to all of us because, see, we're all on Zoom interacting with each other today. But think about the millions of our fellow Americans and members who don't have access to the internet. So if we only have one way to engage, look how many people we've just eliminated from participating with us. So that's another thing that I always try to think through. For example, I'll give you a great example of how all this kind of goes together. Is recently we did a AARP Movies for Grown-Ups screening in Jackson, Tennessee. Jackson, Tennessee is about an hour and 50 minutes away from Memphis. Memphis, as you know, is the home of the blues. It's Elvis Presley's home. We like to say we are the capital of barbecue and all things along those lines. So that's a huge urban area. Okay. But like I said, just a little under 2 hours away, you've got Jackson, Tennessee. Small town. Within Jackson, there's strong internet access. But our invite to the Movies for Grown-Ups went to all of our members, not only in Jackson, Madison County, but all of those surrounding rural counties. Okay. One of those counties has a senior center where all the participants are about 70 and over. They're AARP members. The senior center was trying to arrange for a bus to bring about 30 of those members to Jackson. That was going to take them about an hour to get there because they're on the other side of Jackson. The folks that wanted to come see the movie, not one person has an email address. I'm going to say that again. Not one person has an email address. They did not have transportation other than the senior center bus that was going to bring them. They don't have access to the internet because they're in a rural area. So the activities director tried to use her cell phone to register on our Movies for Grown-Ups link. Now, what happened is the link told her what? You can't use that same email address over and over again, right? So she couldn't get everybody registered. She called our customer service number at AARP, our general number. They put her in touch with me. Then I had to contact Movies for Grown-Ups, who then gave me another 1-800 number that allows anyone to call in to say, I'm trying to register for Movies for Grown-Ups, and it links them to the Movies for Grown-Ups department, and they registered those people manually over the telephone.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So again, we always need to remember that just because we're moving in this direction of technology and we're trying to be more efficient and we're trying to use systems, we cannot ever forget our friends, family, neighbors, members who don't have that. And even within an urban area, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this at one point or another, there are dead zones within Memphis, which is an urban city. Okay. So it's not just in rural areas, it can happen anywhere. And so when we're talking about, are we really getting our message to our audience? Then we have to make sure that when we talk to those in the community, hold on just a second, I forgot to cut everything off. When we talk to those in the community, that we are always prepared to offer them a telephone number that they can use. Now, this may not seem like it's important if you live in a very large area. Like there may be some folks on the call today that are from the regions within AARP that we call mega, right? And you may say, well, I don't think this is anything that's important to us. But again, just keep it in mind because you may have areas or pockets of areas where this is important. And that is still a great way to recruit volunteers. And when you are working with your current volunteers to help retain them, because those volunteers are saying, listen, I'm actively involved. Now I was able to help some folks that may have been disconnected to really connect with us and enjoy an event and participate in AARP's message. So I just sort of wanted to give that as an example to show all the different moving parts and pieces that we need to remember when we're recruiting and also trying to retain our volunteers. Another thing we need to remember is, and this is about being balanced, right? Sometimes the goals that we get from our national office are focused on just adding more volunteers, and that's great, but we don't want to forget, wait a minute, how do I show our appreciation for the volunteers that have always been with me, that continue to support, that can go out on their own even and do an event. They have the tablecloth, we send them the supplies, they have their DIY script, and they're ready to go out. How do we reward those volunteers, retain them, and thank them? And again, we have to get creative with that. So we don't ever want to forget those that we count on all the time. Let's make sure that they are included in things, for example, that we sponsor at AARP. It may not require that volunteer to do anything but dress up and come and be our guest, right? We don't always want to be the one with our hand out asking. We need to also turn around and thank you all and bring y'all into some of the things that we're doing where you just get to show up and have a good time. You don't have to do anything. You just come and enjoy yourself. And for me, I think that's very important. And I try to live that and do that and arrange those fun things for longtime volunteers who are always there, always willing to help, to show them how much we appreciate them. So I'm going to stop rambling and let you all ask questions if you would like, or let you continue on with your meeting. But I appreciate you so much for inviting me to be here as your guest today.
Well, thank you so much, Caprice, for that inspiring talk. And we do have time for a few questions. And I'm sure you've raised some issues that people might want to ask about now. Antoine, I see your hand first.
Yes, thank you, and very good topic well for me this morning. Appreciate Caprice sharing what you've shared. Can you share a little bit too in terms of what what do you do to recognize volunteers in Tennessee? I know you guys do a few things. I remember talking to Stacy and uh oh my God, I'm forgetting her name right now. She's going to kill me. That's why you don't drop names.
That's okay. Is it
Um
what position is
Lisa
it? State
Collier.
director?
Lisa
Oh, Lisa.
Collier.
Yes, Lisa.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
But
So,
if you could share a little bit about like what are some of the specific things that you do, the tangible
sure.
things that you do to recognize volunteers?
Absolutely. Well, on our volunteer team here, for my team here in the West Division, everybody, we always say, well, can we just get together and break bread together? Right. So that may sound like a small thing, but if we've done a really large event, or let's say we've all been there and worked for that morning, I always try to remember to do that. It may sound small, but it's a big thing. Ask them, listen, let's get together afterwards. Let's go have lunch somewhere. It's an inexpensive way to stop and just ask them, get their feedback about the event, what was good, what was bad, what we can do differently. Thank them for their participation. And it's also a great time to let them know about other things that are on the horizon that we may not be ready to announce publicly yet. So that helps our volunteers feel like, oh, okay, membership does have its privileges, right? We get to know about things first and hear about things in the very beginning process, and we don't even have it off the ground yet. Another thing that we do is we have what's called state planning. And this year, our state director is making sure to invite in our executive council of volunteers that serve at the highest level and that also help with planning and programming and things that are going to be on the state plan. So that's really big too. They're really looking forward to being involved with that. And another celebratory thing that we do, and I'm actually on the planning committee for that this year, is our end of year celebration for volunteers. So this year, our state director has decided to hold that celebration in Memphis. So Memphis is about, depending on what part of Nashville or Middle Tennessee you're in, it can be 3.5 hours or so. But we're going to invite everyone. So those that are in East Tennessee, right, that's at least 7.5 to 8 hours, again, depending on what part of East Tennessee you live in. If you look at Tennessee on the map, you'll realize super long. It is very long. We border several states. And so, as I just said, you can drive for 8 hours and you're still in Tennessee, right? so it's an undertaking to even get those East volunteers to come to Memphis, but the invitation is there, and we hope and pray that they will join us. And at that time, we do fun things like a movie night, or in the past, before I came on board, they've had like a little evening reception with the band and music and that sort of thing. So we try to get creative with that, and then it's usually a 2-day type event. And then the next day, Mia, our state director, will give her presentation highlights. We'll bring in guest speakers from the community. For example, for the one here in Memphis, I'm working now to bring in some of our key community leaders, like the Shelby County mayor, the police director, and also those that received our AARP Community Challenge Grant, especially those that received the larger grant, like at 25,000 or more, because all of our volunteers love to hear from those folks that received the grant. What did you do with the money? What does it look like? So those organizations come in with a presentation of pictures and all of that kind of thing. And it helps make the community challenge grant real, because so many of our volunteers actually volunteer their time to review all of those submissions and to score all of them. And then all of that gets turned into Lisa. And so it is a long and very time-consuming process. And that's the reason why I wanted to sort of include that in the end of year, so that they can see the end result of all of their hard work and really make them feel a part of our team, because they are.
Okay, well, thank you, Caprice, for that. And we've got 3 questions or
Okay.
3 people with their hands up here. So if you could give, let's Gail, it looks like you're first.
Okay, hi, I'm Gail in Tennessee, and Caprice is my buddy. I'm in East region, but hey, I hang out across the state, wherever. And I have more of a comment than a question. When you talk about inclusiveness, the blind and deaf is another set of our community that we need to think about when we schedule events. You know, are we going to have an interpreter there? Are we going to have the session recorded with closed caption or sound or whatever? But again, we may be missing a large part of our audience because we have events that don't include that those groups. So I just wanted to share that. And also share that I went to the volunteer year-end last year and had a ball. It was 2 days and had a ball. So that if you want to adopt one of those, I'd say do it, because it was just fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gail. Bettina, I guess you're next, huh?
Hi, everybody. Yes, Gail said that Caprice was the woman, and Gail was absolutely right. And I want to know, Caprice, how do I join your fan club? But anyway, just a quick question, and I think everybody could weigh in on this if they have any thoughts. You have a new volunteer. That new volunteer is very capable and competent, has a lot of great ideas, but they're brand new. And they're so intent on making all these changes because they think it would be better operating that way. How do you kind of direct that in a way that you're not shutting them down, but still encouraging them to participate? Because some of the things that they may suggest are just because they don't know the organization well enough yet. How do you kind of direct that?
That's a great question. And that's where our onboarding process becomes super important. And our state, Lisa, helps lead that. And when she returns back from her interim position, she'll be back involved with that again. But it's really important to help them understand, as best we can, our AARP process, why things are done a certain way. It may seem to them, coming in as an outsider, that it doesn't really make sense at all. And why are y'all doing that? And there's a much more efficient way. So that's where we as staff step in to, again, take the lead on explaining that and help them understand. Now, okay, so on this team, we move together as a team, just like any other team, whether it's basketball, football, anything, right? And again, knowing their background, that's where also the interview process becomes very important, because sometimes it's okay to decline a volunteer. During that interview process, it's our job to make sure that we are really understanding that person, where they fit in, where they're coming from, what they want to bring. And during that process, if it bubbles up that, like you said, well, they've had all these ideas, and if they are really not willing to just kind of go along first to see what we're doing and how we're doing, and then give us a chance to make changes, right? Then we need to sort of reconsider, is this going to be a good fit? And our Office of Volunteer Engagement has a wonderful declination letter, and it refers them to Create the Good. So we are not turning them down like, oh, no, we can't deal with you. But that kind of gives them another entry into AARP, maybe a little slower pace. They get a little more acclimated. Then we can go back and revisit that and bring them back on the team full force to be a forward-facing volunteer out there in the community with us. But you're right. That's a great question.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Bettina. And now our final question for Caprice, because we've got to let her go. Anita?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can. Thank you.
Mine was more like an idea for the people who don't have email. It used to be long time ago, there were calling trees. And if all these people are at a senior center, there's a good chance they know each other. And it's all, we've been talking so much about COVID and how people are isolated. I just wondered if we can bring back some of those calling trees, of course, with their permission.
That's a great idea. I know that we have a program. The name of it escapes me right now. I think it's called Hub Dialer. Stacy Pennington on our team has used that before to reach out to folks.
Yes.
In this example with the center, the activities director became the point of contact. And so she was the one that was able to corral everybody together, get them on the bus, and then get them to the movie theater. But that's a great suggestion because we're going to continue to face these challenges as we move along. And that's why we need our volunteers to help us come up with good ideas to manage that. That's a great question.
And then just one kind of warning. I did something like that here in Kansas, and I got the school bus to give us a bus for free. And then I got a lot of complaints that it was very uncomfortable and the seats were hard. So
Right.
Just because it's free, it doesn't always work for seniors. I just thought I'd throw that in.
You are so right about that. And we avoided that by letting the senior center provide their own transportation. So they knew what to select for every one of their residents that they were bringing. You see what I mean? But you're right. That is one of those slippery slopes that I don't want to go down.
Yeah, and you have seniors who don't mind bumping along, and then you have some who like complain that it was a ride, but not what they were expecting.
All right. Thank you, Anita. And now thank you very much, Caprice, for sharing your thoughts and ideas today. I think this is helping us wonderfully get started. And we've still got some time to have our normal kinds of discussions. You're welcome to stay if you wish. And I want to also, again, thank Lisa Collier for helping us get to you. And wanted to remind people that we do have materials. The OVE has made a major effort at trying to put materials in places that you can easily access those. So they're in the portal library under volunteer engagement resources, staff and leaders. There's an entire separate file that talks about plow, plant, and prosper. And it's all broken down by all the little pieces that you might need. Staff has access to that same information on Teams. And I think, Kathy, you're going to put that information in chat so that people will have that link as well. So again, just thank you, Caprice. And now, Dr. Mary, I think we're ready to move to our next question.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And Caprice is really just a wealth of not only information, but tremendous energy. So we thank her for all the ideas that she sparked in the conversation. I have a couple of questions to pose to the group. Where do you find your volunteers? Or do they find you? So if you have a place of where you find them, if you can just maybe give us one source that has worked for you in the past. Do we have anyone that wants to answer that question? Where do you find your volunteers, or do they find you? Carol, I see you off mute. Did you want to answer?
Carol Lee? Me?
Carol Lee, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, I'm on the onboarding team for the statewide of Florida. And we get many of our volunteers, prospective volunteers that sign up on the website. They go and they do a sign up there, and that's how we get many of ours from Broward and Miami-Dade. We do, since we have gone to live events, we have like a business card for volunteers scanned, so that they can go on and scan. After they get the card, they go on and they scan the card and they fill out an application, and that's how we interview them and we go through the process. But I have run into a few hiccups, which is the little statement at the end of the application. A couple of the volunteers did not like what was written on it about, I guess, that the AARP will not be responsible. So for, because they want to take pictures or statements or whatever. And I says, well, that has been there for many years, or it's been on there, but I think they are trying to work on it. And now that we don't have to sign that media release anymore, I think they feel more comfortable that way.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Lenore, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, we actually recruited folks for our Speakers Bureau through the Toastmasters. We had a member of our Speakers Bureau team who had been in the Toastmasters, and it just proliferated. We had all these people, experienced speakers, who came to our training. And we also, at that point, tried to interest them in other opportunities. So the entry point was the Speakers Bureau, but we've had a number of Speaker Bureau volunteers who have participated in other AARP events.
That's an ideal pipeline, because
Yeah.
you know that they can speak and command a room already. So thank you for sharing that. That sounds like what I would call a reliable source. Are there any other reliable sources that any of you have used, or do you target specific volunteers for roles, or do you ask a volunteer what their skills are and help lead them to the right initiative to support? Any other answers to those questions? Anita, I see your hand is still up. Is that from last time, or do you have something to add?
It might just be up.
Okay, Linda, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was still up, but actually I do have something to add. So I was about to type it into the chat, but I might as well say it. Sorry, I guess I have to figure out how to put my hand down. You hinted at asking people about their skill set, and I was
Yes.
just typing. I wonder if we can create just a kind and gentle form, maybe even something we can do online with them about their skill set. So more like a quick survey, and then from their answers, we don't have to submit it anywhere except to ourselves. We'll get an idea of where they might be suited, because one of the first things people ask me, it seems to be an automatic reaction, which is, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, well, there's so many things we can do. And there doesn't seem to be a quick and easy way to, especially maybe very busy retired people, there doesn't seem to be something we can hand them that's just boom, 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 plus other things. And I know it differs a lot from state to state, but that would definitely help me, because sometimes I too don't have the time to talk to, somebody at a place where I might be able to find volunteers.
And that's an excellent suggestion. And I know I have seen some states that do have either the roles that are available on some kind of information sheet, or when they are looking for volunteers, they may have kind of an intake form that asks them what are their skills and strengths and talents, and what are they good at. So both of those are ways in order to obtain that information. Linda, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so a couple things just to address that. We were one of the states that were approved to have the QR code, the little code with the different symbols
Yeah.
in it. And we had that linked to different things. So one was to go to the aarp.org page so that people could see the different opportunities for volunteering that were there. And also it can go for links and that kind of thing. But what I wanted to address was your original question, where do you find your volunteers? We have been trying to recruit for our advocacy programs. You know, we're putting a big push on paid leave. And so what the advocacy director has done was she put the state into 5 different regions and then has gone there meeting with the representatives in that area as well as the volunteers. They were invited, just a mailing to that particular area of Vermont to come to a coffee so that she could talk with them and see if they're interested in entering as a volunteer for advocacy. So I'll make that brief.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Becky, I see your hand up. These are some great suggestions, and I'm sure everybody's taking note, but we also know it's being recorded, so you can go back and watch it.
Yeah, great. In Oregon, we do a combination of all of them. We use the QR code and pass that out at events in certain areas. We have also for our remote locations, we've had coffee meet and greet coffees where they come in and we can talk about different positions that are open. We have certain positions that are targeted, and then we have the general, which is the QR code points them to the general. And we have links for all of those that any volunteer can send to other people that might be interested in volunteering.
Thank you. And I know Deborah's thinking this, so I'm going to ask it if any of the forms that you use that have the QR codes are available for you to share, either to put in the chat, or you can send them to Deborah and she'll post them in the portal, because I know people are wanting to see what these examples look like. Anita, you have a quick question before we go to the next question from Deborah?
I just thought of something that I got from Special Olympics, and it said urgently needed, or wording to that, wording like that, and it listed 3 things, and I was able to just forward them to other people. So maybe something that we are very specific about that we can then forward to people we think might be interested.
That sounds like a great idea. So kind of highlighting where we want people so that if it's something that appeals to them, they can respond. Deborah, you want to take the next question?
Well, sure. And I do appreciate all of the discussion that's gone on so far and the ideas. And this just continues. This next question just continues. It's what keeps your volunteers committed to the organization? And is there anything specific that you provide that almost guarantees volunteers continue to grow in service? What do you do to make sure that it's all still a positive for people who have been around for a while? Thoughts?
Well, I think gift cards are one thing, right? If you have people that are working like the tax aid folks, how hard they put work into their efforts, send them gift cards. There's a bunch that is allocated per state. We do that as well as recognition. particularly at the Andrus Award that's coming up for us at the end of the year. That's a way we recognize specific volunteers by the different areas that they're leaders in.
Okay. Okay, Anita, you have another comment, huh? Your hand is raised.
No, I've got to figure out how to put my hand down. Sorry.
That's
No
okay.
worries. I got it.
Okay, got it. Okay. Anyone else have some suggestions about how we keep volunteers committed to our organization now? Lenore?
Well, I think immediate follow-up, whether it's a Movies for Grown-Up event or a training, I'm involved in Speakers Bureau training or the presentations that folks are giving, right after the presentation, letting folks know, letting the lead volunteer know that they've done a good job and how important their contribution is, and not to wait too long to give that feedback. So there's definitely getting a thank you. And, your efforts were really appreciated.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. I know we talk about debriefing frequently after events, and how we use that information going forward to build better events, to build better responses is something I guess we just have to make sure we do well. All right. Well, any other questions or comments for today? It looks like, Kathy, would you like to explain what you put in the chat?
Yes, I win the award for the 2 longest posts in chat ever. Sorry about that. We have, hi everybody. we have resources for volunteers in the volunteer portal. Staff can access those. We also have Microsoft Teams channels or sites that only staff can access. So we just wanted to acknowledge that Office of Volunteer Engagement and a number of the volunteers you see in front of you have worked on a resource around recruitment called Plow, Plant, and Prosper. And that's been sort of a theme for us as we work with the states in how to recruit, acknowledging that before you recruit, in order for that to be successful, you really need to take time to plow, think through how you're going to prepare for those folks and make their engagement a success. And so in addition to a guide, which we can put in the chatter feed for 360, I just had put in the 2 places that staff can find that gold mine if you want to go in and just poke around, and the Teams channel, and the link is there. And for volunteers, as Deborah mentioned earlier, it's in the volunteer portal. And I know that a number of you will go immediately and look for it, and some will find it and some will say, I don't have that. So I put a note that right now it's in a folder for staff and volunteer leaders. So some of you will be able to access that. And we just realized it was there and needed to be in the all volunteer folder. So we'll be working over the next week or so to get that transferred over. So if you're looking for something, you can't find it, contact your staff partner or Deborah Turner or me, whoever, or Mary, Dr. Mary Clark. So I'm happy to help folks that would like assistance with finding some of those good resources and collections. But in the meantime, your best source, I think, is the 360 group chatter feed. So back to you, Deborah, to remind people what a valuable resource the chatter group is.
Right, it is, and it is continuing to be even more so as you all are sharing so wonderfully materials, picking things up, and we're trying to make sure it's organized, answers the questions that you raise. And I just, before we go off here, because we keep this to 45 minutes, wanted to make sure that I thank everyone who completed a poll at the end of the last meeting, who turned in information on the survey form that we provided to you by QR code, because we ask, what do you want to see as topics going forward from September through December and then in 2024. So we've already got some suggestions from people for next year. And Caprice Morgan came to us because you asked for us to do this. And the new topics are already on the chatter feed as well for the next 4 months. And then in December, the list will be produced again for 2024. So thank you all for providing information. If you just come across anything, just make sure to send it to me. We're always glad to put it together for you and make sure more people have it. So I thank Dr. Mary Clark, who is just a wonderful co-lead and help. And thank you all for participating today. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, everyone. Good seeing you. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you, Deborah.
you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Mary.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
You're welcome anytime.
Welcome.
People are going away here.
Deborah, want to stop recording?
Well, okay.